You know, one of the things I've tried to do is to give people the talking points about what to say. And so when I'm in my State of the City address, that people, you know, come and they you know, say really nice things afterwards. They didn't know this, and they're happy to know it. What I really want those people to do is contact the people in the rest of the country or their, you know, their social circle, but they don't know what to say. You know, they love the city, but they don't know what to say. And so I try to give people their talking points. And so our best ambassadors are the people that live here. I mean, you know, they're the ones that have been, you know, spreading the word around the country and indirectly bringing in, you know, large conventions and visitors from all over. And I just hope that continues. I hope people continue to share the pride and want to invite people to come here. And if that happens, we're going to continue to grow the economy and create a better place and take advantage of kind of the advantages we've always had but never really were able to take advantage of. You know, the city's changing, and I think the rate of change is increasing, and change always makes people a little uncomfortable, you know, just from the human psyche. Change is not something I don't think we adapt to easily. And so with all the investment, with all the new people moving into the city, there's just change happening at a much more rapid pace. You know, and so, you know, those that are nostalgic or those that, you know, kind of like the way things are going to, you know, continually being pushed, you know, in directions that not everybody's comfortable with. And you know, a leader has to be able to communicate why this change is necessary and why it's a good thing, and try to help people through that. Because at the end of the day, you need positive energy in your city. And a lot of cities that change really quickly, you know, have a lack of positive energy. People see change as, you know, as something that's, you know, the downside of the improvements. You know, maybe more traffic congestion or you know, higher levels of density in parts of the city that we didn't have high density before. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things to keep your eye on, but communicating, I think, and continue to talk about the growth of the city and the inclusiveness that's necessary, I think these are all good things. And certainly, you know, you look at the population growth, the job growth. I mean, there's every reason to think at the end of the day that what most people care most about, and that's their kids or their neighbors' kids or their, you know, their grandkids. They're gonna have more opportunities here if they choose to live here than they would have had otherwise. And I think at the end of the day, that's what people really care about most. That sometimes they lose sight of the fact that that's the most important thing in their lives is their family. And their family has opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise, whether it's just going out to a restaurant or going down to the whitewater facility. I mean, there's things to do, there's things to see, there's places to eat, a place to go that wouldn't have happened without, you know, all this positive energy that's taking place in the city.
Things that are coming online too, like being able to go to the downtown park, which is going to be a pretty big park, or the convention center for an event that is for local residents generally instead of out-of-towners.
You know, people say, God, the last 5 or 10 years have been amazing, and they have, but I would say the next 5 or 10 are probably going to be even more amazing when you consider things like the park, the streetcar, the new convention center, and how that part of the center of the city is going to change. I think you'll see continued development along the river, you know, which everybody kind of enjoys. And then you've got all the street improvements, all the sidewalks and the trail system. So that, I mean, just enhancements to the quality of life. I think everybody should see that positive energy just continue to escalate. And it's also part of a stimulus to the economy too. I mean, every time we build a park or a convention center or a streetcar, we're hiring people to do these things, and so it continues to put people to work, and it also, you know, I think allows nonprofits to succeed, and we rely more and more on nonprofits in this community. So anything we can do to have a strong economy to help faith-based organizations and philanthropists and nonprofits succeed just continues to pay dividends as well. I mean, the private sector and the partnerships, you know, for instance, you know, Waste Management is a national company that, you know, picks up trash. Well, you know, they're also, you know, heavily involved in recycling, and as cities tried to do more and more on the recycling side, you need public-private partnerships where there, you know, there's a win-win involved if, you know, you're going to get your city to continue to grow. And you see people willing to develop parts of the city that may have been overlooked or not had any new development in a long, long time. And sometimes partnerships have to emerge there. Oklahoma City Beautiful does some great work on beautification projects in our city, but there's usually a private sector donor involved when the city gets involved. The way I like to describe it is, if people come to us with an opportunity, we should always try to say yes if, as opposed to no because. It's real easy when you're in city government, a new idea comes along and you just, you're overwhelmed anyway. It's real easy to fall into that, no, we can't do that and here's why. But it's not maybe your first instinct, but you have to learn to say, yes, let's talk about that. We could do that if, and then whatever the if is. In other words, let's continue to talk and figure out a way to make it happen. The private sector has a lot of ideas, and they typically though need the city to be part of the solution. Sometimes it's a little bit, sometimes it's more. But in this city, we have a lot of people who want the city to succeed and they're willing to help, but they need the city's cooperation.
Can that translate to the state level?
Well, yeah, it can. But I mean, we've just had, it's no one person at the state legislature. It's a collective series of years of missteps. They haven't protected their revenue through the years, and so we have to get out of that all politics all the time mode. Out of the state legislature. It seems like it's urban versus rural, or Oklahoma City versus Tulsa, or Republicans versus Democrats, or Republicans versus Republicans, or House versus Senate, and none of that is helpful. Not one bit of that is helpful to creating positive energy in the state, or to make people feel better about the state. And it's hard to control the narrative in kind of the wake of all that negativity that takes place out there. So yeah, it can happen, but it takes some cultural shifts. That's one of them. The other one is health and education. The individual people in this state have just allowed the culture of health and education to keep going down, down, down. We've allowed that to happen. And we need to address that and realize that health and education are important, and we're going to prioritize them.
You get the trend line.
Exactly. And there's a leadership aspect to that I want to work on.
You feel, with regard to communication and moving the city forward, do you feel comfortable with your successor, the partnerships with the Alliance, the Chamber, and the Council's strengths and ability to move forward? Yeah,
the strength of the leadership is the depth of the leadership. I mean, the business leaders want the city to succeed. The chamber wants the city to grow for all the right reasons. They want the city to do well for all the right reasons. And if you've been in Oklahoma City a long time, you kind of take that for granted. But I can assure you, in almost every other city out there, there's some sort of friction between City Hall and the Chamber of Commerce. And there's just a lot less of that in Oklahoma City. And I think that's why the city and the business community work so well about attracting retail and attracting job growth. You also mentioned the council. I say it when I'm out and about, we have the best city council anywhere. I mean, I have visited with mayors and I've met city council people all over the country, and I kind of read and watch and keep my eyes open. And, it's easy for city councils to become, more about special interest groups, or more about, the individual council person than it is about the city's overall growth. And we just had a series of councils here through the years that really had a broad perspective. They're very astute, they're not easily fooled, they're sophisticated, they've traveled, and all of those things I think are elements of a person who has a perspective on what Oklahoma City can be. And they love the city. I mean, we just don't have people running for city council, for their own personal political gain. They're running for the right reasons. I think that is the most under-noticed part of Oklahoma City's achievement. Diversifying an economy is really hard. And, over 25 years, the Chamber and the city have been able to take a very oil-based economy, oil and gas-based economy, and transform it into a diversified economy. And it kind of went unnoticed in certain respects, and probably underappreciated. And I saw that recent poll that someone who claimed to have gauged it said we had the 7th most diversified economy in the country. Well, I mean, that's amazing. And you know, I saw it anecdotally all the time. You know, my first large-scale job creation effort that I worked on was the Dell effort in 2004. But certainly, you know, working on all 3 iterations of Boeing, you know, continuing to see the aviation sector grow. And so it's really about taking stock of your community. What do we have that could grow? And in our case, we saw Tinker Air Force Base and a really good aviation workforce and a low cost of living. And then you look at the aviation industry, and they had a lot of investment in places with high cost of living. So if we can provide the workforce and a low cost of living, that's a great place for us to start growing jobs. And you know, through working with the state and the Department of Commerce and the Chamber, I mean, it's been a lot of people, you know, kind of all hands on deck. But you know, it continues to grow, and once you start growing in that area, you know, you develop momentum, and that's certainly taken place. But you know, going forward, which I think was part of your question, it's technology, and you look at a company called like Paycom. You know, like, I mean, Paycom is doing HR work, you know, which sounds like it's in some sort of HR category. It's a technology company, is what it is. And the energy industry is kind of morphing into a technology company. I mean, they're doing things with less people, and the technology is what's allowing them, you know, to do that. There's a lot higher levels of technology at city government. You know, when I came to City Hall and the City Council, you know, in 2001, you know, we had just over 4,000 employees. I think the number's pretty close today. I mean, we've added like 150,000 people, and we haven't really added much to our workforce. And you know, I came from a television industry that was doing exactly the same thing. And just to back up to part of a question you didn't ask, and I entered television in Oklahoma City in 1981. Cox Cable was just infiltrating the market, just starting off. And over the years, they got a higher and higher percentage of viewership. People started having more and more choices. It was harder and harder for a local TV station to gather the type of audience they used to enjoy. And so, you know, in 1981, you know, we had a certain amount of inventory that the news department had to fill. It was relatively small. It was like, you know, there was like a 5 and a 6 and a 10 o'clock news. You know, and now, of course, now there's 2-3 hours in the morning, and then there's an hour at noon, and then there's, you know, some stations comes on at 4 o'clock. So we've added all this inventory in the industry through the years, but the staffs are smaller than they used to be. They're not bigger. And so this doing more with less was something I was completely in tune with throughout my entire television career. And we get to City Hall, and it's like the exact same thing. You have to do more with less. And a lot of people just assume, well, we have more people, we have to hire more staff. And you say, well, not always. And I think, you know, one of the city manager's biggest strengths is budgetary exercises that insist each of the department heads look at a decreased amount of money coming the next year forward. Even if we have more money, put together a budget with less money. Let's see what that looks like. You know, in other words, force them into a more efficient paradigm that they might not have fallen in comfortably if we just said, hey, we have more money, here's more money for you too. He has pushed for efficiency. And private sector has been doing that naturally. It's not always instinctual with the city government. It seems like if you have more money, you always want to spend it. But we have always tried to keep our fixed costs low, so we'd have more money to do the things that can make our city really stand out.
Could that translate to the state level?
Absolutely, and the state's not good at doing more with less. I mean, you see these large agencies that are, you know, overbearing. A lot of it is constitutional issues. You know, some of these agencies don't have the level of accountability that they need, and it's not easy to fix. And one of the frustrations of the legislature and governors throughout the history of our state is their inability to streamline a lot of these large agencies because they have their own level of autonomy, and part of that needs to be addressed. Absolutely. I mean, we have a state constitution that hasn't been able to change with the times, and it has frustrated the elected leaders throughout our state's history.
Any ideas on what this city could do to help the school district, the inner city schools, improve academics?
Well, I think it's continuing to push the envelope on what we're already doing, getting the business community more involved, getting citizens more involved, more after-school programs, more reading programs. Education is changing a lot, but I don't know that in general the general population feels the need to put in a lot of new policies and ideas. We do. We have to change our perception of how to educate young people, and technology is a part of that. But we've got to get more dollars into the classrooms where it really matters, and part of that, that inefficiency I was talking about before. There's a lot of inefficiency in our educational system statewide. There's a lot of inefficiency in delivering, public safety and government services. The way I look at it is I ask myself, okay, if we were starting from scratch, would we create a county with 13 fire departments? Well, of course not. Would we want 13 police departments? Well, of course not. Would we want 24 school districts? Well, of course not. But that's what we have. I mean, that's the reality today.
In Oklahoma County.
In Oklahoma County, or in Oklahoma County and / Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City.
I've kind of mixed the lines there to make a point.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we have all this sort of inefficiency, and it's just really hard to change. But we need to start working on some of those efficiencies, so we can get more dollars into the classroom, so the kids get a better education.